Welcome to the ROI Masterclass, the podcast where vision meets strategy and bold moves create measurable results. I'm Liat Siegel, interior designer and ROI strategist with 17 years of experience. I help businesses transform properties and ideas into high-performing assets. This show is specifically for real estate investors, hospitality operators, and boutique developers who aren't afraid to take risks, challenge the status quo, and demand a return on every decision they make. Each and every week, we talk with innovators and leaders across industries about the strategies and the insights and really all the unconventional thinking that turns potential into profit every single time. If you believe that smart design, decisive leadership, and strategic risk are the keys to real ROI, you're in the exact right place. Let's dive in. Today's guest is a powerhouse in real estate development and architecture with over 40 years of experience across the Northeast, Southeast, and beyond. From high-rise condos to private Palm Beach estates, Tom has led the design, development, and delivery of over 20 million square feet of projects: commercial, medical, industrial, and luxury residential. His work has earned national recognition, including a meritorious award from President George H.W. Bush for a model daycare project near the White House. Now heading Little & Associates, he serves as an owner's rep and strategic partner on major developments throughout Florida and New York. Thank you so much, Tom, for being here. I am so excited to hear all your wisdom. And please share a little bit about yourself and your background for our audience.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. I started out in the construction industry many years ago when I was a young kid, working for my grandfather, who was a builder. And that kind of led me to learn everything about the construction industry, albeit architecture, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, everything associated with the development or building of a facility, whatever it might be. And so my grandfather taught me how to draw. He was a self-made builder. And what that led me to was, he used to call me Butch and say, "Hey, Butch," he says, "you're a good drawer." He says, "You should be an architect." I said, "Well, Grandpa, I can't afford it." So my parents couldn't afford it. And so I joined the Marine Corps. When I got out of high school, got out of the Marine Corps, used the GI Bill to go to college, went to the University of Virginia, practiced architecture for approximately 15 to 20 years up in the Washington, D.C. Northeast area. And we designed just about every type of facility you can imagine, from medical to high-end residential to institutional to retail, hospitality, industrial, every type of architecture or development we were involved in. And I was the lead architect at the time in the firm. And so fast forward after that, after 15 or 20 years in that industry, I had an opportunity to move myself to Florida and my family. What was involved was there was a offshore interest, a Saudi Arabian prince, that was developing a huge mansion in Palm Beach. The mansion was larger than the Hearst Mansion in San Simeon, California. This mansion was 145,000 square feet. And it took me a year to get that project, or to be involved as the owner's rep, but I eventually got it. So that's what moved me to Florida. And so I represented this prince for the better part of 2 years. I was traveling all over the world with the prince, and we hired, and I don't know if you all know, there's a firm out of Paris, Alberto Pinto, who was a world-renowned interior designer who had designed all of the Prince's facilities throughout the world. And so I worked very closely with Alberto. He has since passed away. And we did this huge mansion design-wise that was going to be built and developed in Palm Beach. Interestingly enough, thinking back through that time frame, you had a person of Arab heritage coming into a Jewish community, which at that time was a challenge. But we took the project through the town of Palm Beach, hired the best law firm that we could buy, and we got the project approved. And we actually started construction, and this is back in late 92. We had demolished an existing house that was on the property. It was 6 acres of land that went from the intercoastal to the Atlantic Ocean. Actually not too far from Mar-a-Lago, probably a mile north of Mar-a-Lago. And so when we started the construction, we had demolished the existing properties and we built a dock for the client's yacht that was to be housed there. And then we got a call from London saying that we had to shut down operations, that there were some alleged improprieties during the first Gulf War. And so this prince was Bin Khalid Sultan, represented that group for a long time. And then that actually was the catalyst for me to start my company, Little and Associates. And Little and Associates has been in business since 92, 33 years. And my experience and my background has been, as I said earlier, every type of construction. And so we've represented clients from Rhode Island all the way to Santa Barbara, California, and everywhere in between. Some of the clients that I've had are Tiger Woods as a client, Gannett family's a client, Greg Norman's a client, and others which I can't mention because of confidentiality agreements. So what we do as a company, we are engaged as an owner's rep, and it can be any type of project, as I stated earlier. And what we'll do is we'll hire the architects, the engineers, and the contractors. We'll get the legal team involved. If we have to go through a rezoning process or whatever, we'll take the project through from its entitlements through its completion. And by that I mean we'll hire the architect, we'll do the drawings, we'll submit everything to the whatever jurisdiction it needs to go to. We'll hire the architects, we'll bid the project out, we'll oversee the construction, we'll manage the project construction on a weekly basis, and then we'll do weekly reports. And at the end of the day, we'll turn over the project to the client. And so that's pretty much the history of what we do. We're still doing it, been in business for 33 years. I have no intention of retiring. I love what I do. I've had some great clients, as you can see. And so that's pretty much my story.
Well, you have a wealth of knowledge and information. With all of that and all the different types of projects that you've done, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for investors and anyone who has a construction project to get the biggest return on investment, whether it's, the systems or, hiring the right team? What have you found in your experience to be the most important lever for them to pull?
That's a very good question. And this would lead me into a segue of, I'm writing a book. And to answer that question, most importantly, when anyone is looking at investing in a piece of property or buying a piece of property and developing it for whatever type of real estate it might be, the most important thing is the due diligence process that you go through that acquisition. And if there's not enough time spent on the due diligence and before that acquisition, due diligence meaning finding out everything about that property. Is it zoned properly? When was it built? Are there any problems with the property? Who's managing it? Who was the architect? Who was the contractor? What town was it in? All the things associated with developing any kind of property anywhere in the country. Those are questions you need to ask. If I'm a developer, I've developed many properties myself, and I've done projects in Austin, Texas. I've done projects in Louisiana, and what I do for my clients is I'll go physically get on a plane, go to wherever I need to go to, and I'll look at the lay of the land, and I'll find out what's involved and where is the best location for this development, whether it's assisted living or if it's a commercial project or institution or whatever it might be. I'll find the exact best location for that. And we did that in New Orleans. We did that in Austin, Texas. We did it in Tyler, Texas, which is borders up to Louisiana. And we did one up in Rhode Island as well. And again, what we did was we went into the marketplace, found out the locations which is best to get the best ROI, and then took the project forward and just took it from getting the legal team, getting the architects, getting whatever approved, getting all the entitlements, and then developing and building the property and doing a turnkey development. And that's what we do as a company. And so, as I said previously, we've done it Rhode Island to Santa Barbara, California. Actually, the most exciting project I ever done was the one I did in Santa Barbara, California. It was for a client that I did. I built 2 houses for him in Miami Beach. He asked me if I'd help him. He has a winery out in Lompoc, California, which is west of LA. And so I was flying out to California once a month, and I was helping him with his winery in Lompoc, and then he had this property that he owned in Santa Barbara, and it was an existing 2-story apartment building, a rental unit, that he wanted to add 2 more floors to it. Well, in California, you have to deal with seismic design, and that's critical as far as what you're doing with regard to the design. It adds probably, I would say, 35 to 40% more cost to a construction project just by nature of what has to be done. We got the project and we took it through, got it approved. We hired local contractor, hired local architect, and we built it while it was occupied, and because they wanted the income stream. And we basically had to go around the perimeter of the entire structure and dig holes and put supports in there to support the structure while we added additional foundations to support the additional load that we were adding to the top 2 floors. Needless to say, it was a challenging effort, but we got it done. The client was happy. And, I look at it this way. I got a happy client. That's my next project. But anyway, that was great. That was a fun project.
How has your design background really shaped how you're an owner's rep and how you develop properties? How has that impacted lens through which you see the world?
Having practiced architecture for a number of years and physically designing projects and then actually producing the working drawings, construction drawings by which these projects get built, gives me the knowledge and experience I need to do whatever kind of project you need. So it can be any kind of a project that I've designed just about anything you can imagine and then some. So with that level of knowledge and experience and physically designing it, I designed Washington, D.C., the Marriott Hooks Hill Bethesda Marriott Hotel. I designed that many, many years ago and got built. Beautiful project. I think it's still in existence. And Marriott was a great client. That's pretty much it. I mean, the design background has led me in the forefront of being, if you're going to be an owner's rep, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know what kind of project it is. Working with a client that sometimes is knowledgeable and not knowledgeable is very critical, because you got to walk them through that whole process and give them the good and the bad of what could possibly happen. And it's all about time, and it's all about time is money. And these clients, they've got schedules and dates and timelines and things that they need to meet, and you got to kind of like work within those constraints and time frames and make it work. And so a lot of that has to deal with, also for me, it's been traveling all over the United States and working with a lot of different architects and contractors throughout the country is of paramount importance also, because if you're working with these local firms that know the lay of the land, know the building process, know the people in the building department, know the people in the planning and zoning, and everybody else that you need to get this project through, that's very critical. So that's what led me into that industry, was my knowledge of the design and then my knowledge of working throughout the country in different parts of the world. So,
and that knowledge and that experience, I'm sure, gives you the ability to also look at a project, a potential development project, and say if it's going to be a good investment or not. Are there some early warning signs or early signs that tell you if it's worthwhile or not, especially based on everything that you write in your book and the due diligence from that perspective? How do you know if it's worth investing in or not?
What I write in the book is that this book is basically about what should be done, what wasn't done. There was a project, and I'll give you an example. There was a project, client from Washington, D.C. came to Florida, and they acquired, or in the process of acquiring, 6,000 apartment units in 15 buildings, all of which were either on the Intercoastal or the Atlantic Ocean. And the sole purpose of that acquisition was to reposition these properties back into the marketplace. Repositioning meant redoing mechanical systems, installing hurricane windows and doors to meet the hurricane code, and a lot of interior finishes and exterior finishes, plus site work. When the company that was hired by this group did their due diligence, as with most acquisitions, you're under a short time frame. You got a short fuse to close on the property, and you need to have this due diligence done right away so you can make a decision as to whether or not you're going to go forward with that piece of property, that acquisition. And so this company had a very short fuse. They should have had 2 or 3 months to do the due diligence. They ended up doing it in 30 to 40 days, and they missed a lot of things. And as a result of that, the things that they missed, it ended up costing the client a lot of money on the back end. And I'm talking, at the time, this was a $100 million project. And it ended up costing them on the backside 50% of that cost because of the things that weren't picked up during the due diligence. A lot of it had to do with proper heights of the building and so on and so forth. It was just a lot of things that caused them a lot of problems, a lot of cost. I think I got to keep defaulting back to due diligence, part of the effort. That's key to anything. And can I look at a piece of property and tell you whether or not it's a good investment? Absolutely. I've done it. I can go anywhere in this country, and if the client's looking for something, whatever it might be, with my 40 plus years in this industry, I can look at something and tell you geographically where it is, if it's in a good location, what I think could need or what it doesn't have, or so on and so forth. Everything associated with that investment, I can tell you from the get-go. So yes, absolutely.
From permitting to delivery, what areas do you think that an investor can lose the most amount of money? Like with that kind of example that you gave about due diligence, is that pretty much it, that they just need to do more homework and more research and dig deeper?
No, there's a few things that you got to look for. If the drawings that are prepared for permitting, most clients, at least ones I've seen in the Southeast, they won't pay architects enough money to do a complete biddable set of construction documents. So what that means is they will pay an architect a fee to do a set of drawings that's maybe 65% complete. So what happens is when those drawings are complete and you submit for a building permit and you get your permit and you start construction, things start to come up that weren't included in the drawings. That's where your costs come in. That's going to add a lot of costs to the project because it was something that wasn't picked up on the drawings. And so when a contractor bids a project, he's going to add 25 to 20% additional cost to cover things that were not included in the plans. So there's a danger in that. So what I learned from that is that, and I try to tell my clients all the time, spend the money up front, get the architects to do the correct drawings, make sure it's 100% complete, so that you can give to any contractor, he can look at those drawings and he can give you pretty much a guaranteed maximum price to build whatever that facility might be. The caveat to that is in renovations. There's not a renovation project that I've ever done in my 40 years, and I've done tons of them in this industry, that if a client doesn't carry a 25% contingency on their hard costs and 20% on their soft costs to cover that, they're going to be hurting at the end. I just finished a huge project in West Palm Beach for a national church. They didn't spend the money on the architecture and they didn't have a contingency, and it cost them a lot of money. When you have a committee that's formed in these church groups, they get a little upset when something like that happens because they got to go back to the parishioners and say, look, we need more money to finish this project because we didn't carry a contingency and these things weren't covered and so on and so forth. So renovation versus ground up, different animal altogether, totally different.
How do you see design being a driver for profitability within these projects?
Well, I thought right out of a comment years ago, form follows function. The design is generated usually by the client, architect produces it, and that sets forward what this is going to cost. Usually I'm an architect. I don't do it anymore, but architects don't have a clue as to what things cost, and they should never be asked for that. But a lot of these architects come up with what they call a budget, and their budgets are generally wrong, never correct. And all the ones I've ever run across, they come up with a budget that just doesn't work. But so that's a key to this whole thing is having a good design that you can pretty much get a good understanding of what you think this is going to cost, which is ultimately going to affect the ROI. So what's tied to the ROI is time and money. If you have a project that's scheduled to take a year and it takes 16 months, it's going to cost you more money. You got contractors' time on the job, general conditions, overhead and profit and all that kind of stuff. So those things all need to be factored, and that needs to be well thought out and well planned up front. Because if it's not, and I also mentioned that in the book about the due diligence period, that whole process is part of, we're not an investment company, but we do represent companies that do invest. And this is what I tell, exactly what I tell them. You got to have all the right information and all the things well thought out, well planned, and the program to do that. And then you need to do a timeline, a schedule as to how long you anticipate that's going to take, and give them some extra time in that schedule just so they can plan for it and understand, well, if something comes up, especially if it's been a renovation, something comes up, well, it's going to extend the schedule a lot. But if you're doing ground up development, you should be able to meet those schedules right on. Unless there's changes made by the investor or the developer, whomever. You can't control that, but that's going to add cost.
To the timeline. I love the idea. Yeah, I was told by a project manager before, always 3 or 4x the amount of time you think it's going to take or the budget, right? Add to it to make sure the contingency, I think, is a better ratio in terms of, like 20-25% additional. But in terms of timeline, especially, there are always decisions and there are always changes, because as you don't know what you don't know until you go. And so to your point about, the budget increasing, you have to have all these plans fleshed out first before you go to bid the project. Even on the design side of things,
absolutely,
all the details and the interior finishes, and the designer, also interior designer, architect, and contractor all need to be working hand in hand, because designers and architects don't necessarily know 100%. They can have an inkling on what is going to cost a little bit more to build out.
Right.
They don't know as much as contractors do in terms of what it's going to take to build it, and how much, doing an arched doorway is more expensive than, doing the traditional rectangular cutout. So, but does that lend to, is it a hotel that needs that look because that is what their clients are expecting? So knowing all these things and doing the due diligence, the market research, and having the right team at the table in a collaborative way, I think is so vital in order to make sure that you're on time, on budget, hopefully under budget, but it's usually not the case. But that's definitely a key goal to work towards.
Another key thing to that is the coordination effort between the interior designer and the architect. Because the architects take a drawing to a certain level, and then in comes the interior designer, and you understand that. A lot of architects will, in some cases, not be happy with what the interior designer wants to do. Because as an architect, you don't touch my design, right? You got a client who's happy. Who's driving this train? It's not you, the architect, or the designer. It's the client.
Exactly.
And there's some times when that gets a little cantankerous. At the end, we all have to remember, at the end of the day, we work for the client. It's the clients. We want that client to be happy. I've had good relationships with just about every firm that we've ever worked with. And we've worked with some local and some international firms as well. And it's all been a good result. I'm proud of that, because you look at the project at the end of the day and say, oh my goodness, that was beautiful. Turned out great. So something to be proud of.
So can you leave our audience with your top 3 tips for making sure that a project is as successful and profitable as possible?
Let's see if I can answer that. That would cover all aspects of the industry, and it's going to be difficult to do that. I will have to exclude. Well, I guess I could include renovations. I think it's the research, the market research, that you need to do, and then hiring the right team, and then putting the right plan together. And I think that's key to the whole thing. And I think once you've satisfied those 3 things, I think you can have a successful project. I've done it before in my career. I've had problems or projects where it wasn't planned properly, and not going to blame fault or fingers. It is what it is. You pick up the pieces and you move on. You fix it. You don't point blame and say, well, their fault, that fault, this side, that's fault. And so, yeah, it's the market research and the right team and planning it.
Always planning. I think planning is the number one thing that I think people are missing.
Yes.
Is having, people will oftentimes just run with it and say, okay, I'm just going to put it together and not really think through and take the time. Like the ROI driven design that we do takes more time up front. Like you were saying, right? It takes a little bit more time and money to set up. But once it's set up correctly and you have that foundation, then you can build a home. You can't build a home without foundation.
That's right.
And so literally having the data, doing the market research, having the due diligence, having the black and white numbers to know what should be invested in. Where do we put the budget towards, and where can we save a little money here or there? I think that is the key, really, to...
I'll add one more comment to that. My grandfather told me many years ago, if you're going to do it right.
Yes.
Do it right. Spend the time and the effort, do it right.
Measure twice, cut once.
That's right. Measure twice, cut once. You're absolutely right.
Except in our world, it's probably measure like 5 times.
That's true. That's very true.
My father always told me that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tom, for being
My pleasure.
with us today and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do next. And I hope that our audience enjoys the show as much as I did.
Well, I'll send you a copy of the book when I get it published.
Amazing.
So we're talking to publishers right now. So I've never written a book before, and I'm excited as I'll get at about writing this book because I lived it. I lived the process, and I think this would be a good read for a lot of people that are looking to invest or buy properties and develop properties. This, I think, would be a great read. So, but anyway, thank you so much. Enjoyed talking to you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, and we'll put your information in the book in the show notes so that they can connect with you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great day.